Hello, my name is Noeline McElvenna. I'm a professor of history at Wright State University, and I'm also president of the AAUP, the Faculty Union. Recently, President Edwards and Provost Lehman have asked us to help Wright State face an impending or potential budget crisis due to the coronavirus. And so we were happy to do that. A team of faculty, all expert researchers, set out to see if we could save the university money without damaging the academic side of the university. That is, the central mission of the university, the teaching and the learning by faculty and students. And so this is what we found. Maintaining a Division I program costs the Wright State University around $10 million every year. There isn't too much variation in that. Sometimes the budget is about $12 million a year, and the athletics program earns $2 million of that. So it's always around this $10 million number that the academics subsidize the athletics. And we want to ask the question, is this a responsible investment? First, we gathered the athletics data from the athletic director. This is one of his presentations. Right now, this school year, as you see, there are 224 student athletes. There are 32 coaches and a lot of other staff. 19% of the athletes get a full ride. In other words, 1% of them pay some of their own tuition and fees. They do very well in school. Every faculty member knows this. 87% of them have a B average. We're very proud of our student athletes. So this looks at the allocations of expenditures across the public universities of Ohio. The average is about 60%. That is, what percentage of athletics expenditures comes out of the academic budget. So Ohio State, if you look over there, it's roughly zero. For the most part, Ohio State athletics, although it costs a lot of money, pays for itself. Cincinnati, they pay for about half. Wright State is at the bottom of this list because the academic side pays 81% of all the athletic costs. I'll come back to this later in the slide. But if you see down below, the cost per student, 8% of the average student, not the athletes, the average student, 8% of the tuition they pay goes to athletics. Here's another way of looking at it. This is for those who like all the numbers. In other words, Wright State has the lowest return on investment in terms of the income it makes from athletics in proportion to the expenses of it. That percentage, 81, that is a minus 81% ROI, stays remarkably consistent from year to year as you look at the bottom two rows there. Even when the budget varies, if the revenues go up, the expenses go up. So there's not much change. And so Wright State Athletics accounts for 4.6% of the university's total expenses. And each athlete costs, in other words, the university an average of $53,000 a year. You'll see at the bottom of the slide how we calculate that. Obviously, $53,000 doesn't go to each athlete. We're talking about the money spent on the coaches, the other staff, the travel. Maintaining the 224 athletes cost the university about $53,000 per athlete. Those on a full ride costs $95,000. The athletic director points out that if you look at the revenue side, the average year we have 260 athletes, and their full tuition and the state support for them would amount to $4 million approximately. But of course, you have to look at the expenditures. From the $4 million of tuition and SSI, the state support, 2.8 something million goes back in terms of the scholarships. In any case, this is what it costs. And some part of it, of course, goes to the very expensive basketball coach who costs $500,000, plus some perks and bonuses every year. When we signed Scott Nagy, we doubled the salary for the basketball coach from the previous basketball coach. Here is the Horizon League men's head basketball coach salaries. The green bar in the middle is about the average salary for a head basketball coach in the Horizon League. The red bar represents Wright State's expenditure on Scott Nagy. We want to ask, is it worth it? We love our 224 student athletes. We've had them in our classes. We help them. We understand how much they work. We want to be very supportive of the 224. And we love the other 12,000 students just as much. Whether they play basketball or whether they play Dungeons and Dragons, we love them just as much. And someone needs to speak for the 12,000. The athletic director speaks very well for the 200. Does all this spending help the average Wright State student? One of the statistics the athletic director presents is this one. He talks about the great success of student athletes, 87% graduation rate, and how well it compares to the graduation rate across the university. No question there. We agree. We want to get the number on the right, the 39%, as high as the 87%. Everybody wants that. How do they do it? How do the athletes do so much better than the average? Here's one of the secrets. The ratio of personal attention they get. The athlete to coach ratio, and that's the 32, not the entire 67 staff members, including coaches. We looked just at the athlete to coach ratio, 7:1. The student to BUFM ratio, BUFM there means the bargaining unit faculty members. So that's most of the full-time teaching faculty at Wright State. We took out to get that number. I know that number has been questioned. The president often gives a 13:1 ratio there. But let's have a look at it. What we did to get this number was take the 526 full-time teaching faculty who are eligible for membership in the union. That meant we had to subtract the School of Medicine and the School of Professional Psychology. And we had to subtract their teachers and we had to subtract their students. We're not quite sure. It's hard to find the number of students in the School of Medicine, but we believe we've gotten the closest number possible there. We've erred on the conservative side. That ratio is 22:1. We don't count adjuncts. We're talking students to full-time teaching faculty. So why, if the 7:1 is the secret sauce that the athletic director claims athletics brings, why would we be trying to increase the ratio for non-athletes, as the president keeps suggesting we do, that we have too many full-time teaching faculty? Why would we not be trying to bring that number down to something closer to the athletics department? Others point to beyond the success of the actual student athletes. The athletics program gets lots of publicity and attention and leads to increased recruitment, enrollment. It makes for a better university. So let's have a look at those numbers. Instead of looking at the numbers that are claimed by the athletics program itself, we went to look at independent research. Here's a couple of professors from economics and behavioral science from top universities, Brigham Young and Chicago. They studied all the correlation between success in Division I sport, and they used the received SAT scores as a proxy for enrollment. That is, those who are applying to go to a university. They looked over a long span of time, and they concluded there's only two sports that make any difference, and that would be football and the men's basketball. And there is significant impact for the very best programs. And even then, it's only short-lived. So, and we're quoting them here, if you're one of the 64 teams in the NCAA tournament, it will yield a 2.2% increase in the total number of SAT score senders or applicants the following year. The others get more, but of course, Wright State has never gotten beyond the first round. So it's the 2.2 increase. Potentially, Wright State could make. Of course, Wright State has gone to the big dance, to the NCAA tournament, only 3 times in about 30 years. We looked at other schools. In 2018, many of you sports fans remember this, I certainly do. The 16th seeded University of Maryland in Baltimore County did what seemed impossible. It hadn't never been done before. They beat the number 1 seed in the first round. But it still did not help their enrollment. As you can look there, the percentage change went down over the 2 years. And as for Wright State, let's look at our own numbers. Wright State in March 18 went to the big dance. In the fall of that year, enrollment dropped 8%. The argument that success in athletics, that any athletics, successful or not, leads to increased enrollment is demonstrably false for us. And we know this because the community is not engaged. Students don't go to games. The spending in athletics, one of those slides I showed you earlier, yields the worst returns amongst the Division I colleges in Ohio. This shouldn't come as a surprise. A few years ago, Wright State University's branding project did an extensive survey, really scientific. They put a lot of money into trying to understand Wright State and how it is seen by its students, by its public. And this is what that survey revealed, that research, that only 10% of Wright State students found athletics important. The truth is, what we learned from that survey is that there are young people who really want that kind of big sports school experience, but they don't come to Wright State. They go to Ohio State, they go to Notre Dame, they go to the schools that promise that kind of big-time sports experience. They're not our customers, so to speak. They are not our students. This has been very clear for years. It's clear through this slide too. This again looks at that 81% allocation that Wright State must make from the academics to the athletics. How it is the lowest among the public universities in Ohio. Another way of looking at it is the reverse way, the direct return on investment in terms of engagement. We have the lowest engagement with our athletics. Right? That's why we have the highest percentage allocation to them. because we have the lowest engagement. We don't make the ticket sales. We don't sell the merchandise that a school like Ohio State will sell. This has been consistently the pattern. Can maintaining a Division I program actually, in fact, be detrimental to recruitment? Because all press is not positive press. What signal do the parents and the students in the region get when, on one hand, administrators lead with the story that Wright State is in extreme financial trouble, which has been the lead story since 2015, and yet they post up wonderful travel pictures sponsored by the university, going to Mexico, going to Italy, visiting popular tourist destinations. Again, we're not knocking these students. We know they play hard, they train hard. But along with the team goes a multitude of coaches, staff, administrators, all sponsored by the athletics budget. The other students, the 12,000 students, wonder why they suffer cuts to their academic programs in terms of the number of faculty, the support for research and teaching that is given to that faculty. They wonder why they suffer cuts to the operational maintenance, while the bathrooms are cleaned less often in the classrooms too. There are cuts in the student job opportunities. And why they should borrow almost $3,000 to pay for sports they care so little for. They have to spend an extra $700 a year per 12,000 to pay for the athletics. Many of them borrow this money. They will be paying off those student loans at interest for years. The message to faculty has always been clear when we see these photographs of the sports teams abroad, of the endless support by the presidents for athletics, while we receive these emails, the reinstitution of austerity measures. One other argument is made for athletics. Does it lead to donations? This is again another measurement of the engagement. In certain schools, those big-time sports schools, the Notre Dames, the Ohio States, Duke University, alumni look back fondly on their years at college. And they remember all the fun they had at the tailgating parties. This is the theory, and that is why they donate so much, because they had so much fun at the games and they associate the university with that. Many of us believed that this was true. We've been told it over and over and over. So our team of researchers actually looked really close at the actual data. Here is the current year's commitments of donations. As you can see, this year the athletics division has been promised $364,000. The colleges and schools have been promised $4.3 million. Now, these things can vary a lot from year to year. We understand that. So we went back and looked at the 4-year average. The athletics average is higher than this year's, certainly. It's $1.1 million. The academics average is $5.1 million. It is not the athletics that encourages alumni and others to donate money to the university. It is their experience in the classrooms and in the library. It is their experiences with faculty who helped them reach their professional career goals. That's what inspires them to give. We suggest one solution is to entirely cut collegiate athletics. Obviously, number one, we should honor the scholarships that have been promised to current student athletes. They are not responsible for the mismanagement of funding. And they've been promised it, and that should be honoured. We would have to pay off whatever is left on the contracts of coaches and anybody else. But this has been a failed experiment. There are those who will be very reluctant to do this. So we made another suggestion. At the very least, we have to look at this slide. If the Wright State budget 2016 was 400 million, and it's going to go down to 200, whether the date on that is 2021 or 22 or 23, then the athletics budget should take a similar level of cut. In 2016, it was 10.4 million. In 2021 or 22 or 23, whenever we say that the Wright State budget should hit 200 million, the athletic budget should hit 5.2. That is commensurate with the size of our university. We could move to Division 2. This data was from the NCAA itself. They studied for a decade many schools who moved from Division 2 to Division 1. It was a study of increased losses. They were losing money under the Division 2 model also, but not as much as under Division 1. The costs increased by 3 to 4 million more than any revenue did. Now, to go to Division 2, we understand there would be an initial loss, right? To change to Division 2, you have to pay off the Horizon League and perhaps other athletic organizations. But the annual cost savings, and we've been asked to think about the long-term solutions, the annual cost savings would be huge. Another word from the NCAA. On the right, you will see the losses when they were Division 2, the little box. It gives you a range of schools they looked at, 8 different universities. And then the subsequent loss when they moved to Division 1. That's the amount the academics, the teaching and learning gives to the 67 who support the 224 athletes. The 12,000 give that. Why, we ask, has this even gone on so long? Why did we ever go to Division 1 when we were national champions in the 1980s at Division 2? We conclude that the primary benefit of reclassifying to Division 1 is an unquantifiable, perceived increase in prestige. Our president is data-driven. Our provost is a scientist. Unquantifiable perceptions are not words they like to deal with. I think it's time for a major change at Wright State. I think it's time to focus on what our mission is. I think it's time to focus on what our students seek. And to understand that Division 1 athletics is not that. Thank you.